Back in 1931, a historian named James Truslow Adams coined a phrase that would end up outliving him by generations: the American dream. In his book titled The Epic of America, he described a society where anyone could rise to their fullest potential, be recognized for who they are, and not be limited by the circumstances they were born into. Sure, the American dream ended up evolving over time. The big house and the white picket fences were eventually replaced by Silicon Valley startups and stock options. But the dream stayed alive. In fact, for decades, it was relentlessly pursued by millions of Indian students. Today, India sends more students to the US than any other country. And for those students, the path was always clear. Land a spot at a decent university in the US, graduate, find a job, build a life. Here's the thing. In 2025, that dream is starting to shift. The Ken surveyed 50 Indians who were either currently pursuing higher education in the US or had recently graduated. And most of them told us that they moved to the US with the hope of getting a job and eventually settling down there. Almost half have already moved back to India or are very quickly making plans to. They told us that the goalposts are shifting. With the Trump administration clamping down on immigrants, jobs are slipping further out of reach, visas are harder than ever to secure, and the path they had once imagined now feels a lot less certain. It's not like the return to India is a walk in the park either. That US degree, once seen as a golden ticket, isn't always a recruiter's cup of tea anymore. So for many, that welcome mat is way thinner than they had expected. In this episode, you will hear from Anand, who's in the process of leaving a great job in the US to be closer to home, Saloni, whose plans were cut short by visa restrictions, and Ishan, an MBA grad from Cornell who's stuck in job hunting limbo. We'll also hear from experts, from advocacy groups and recruiters, on why the American dream is no longer a one-way ticket. I'm Rahel Philippos, and this is 90,000 Hours, a podcast about the future of careers and workplaces. Anand was 25 when he touched down in Boston for the first time. He's 27 today, but he remembers that moment almost like it was yesterday. The cold air, the quiet streets, that pinch-me feeling of finally getting to live his American dream.
I was very, very influenced by this show called Silicon Valley. I'm pretty sure you might have watched it. If you're not, I would recommend it. But there's a very amazing picture that it is painted that you move to the Bay Area, and then you kind of have that ambition of driving a Tesla, working in a maybe Starbucks or any cafeteria in there in SF, and
Full disclosure, Anand isn't his real name. He wanted to tell his story under an alias, so here we are. Before he arrived in the US to pursue a Master of Science in Engineering Management at a Tier 2 university in Boston, Anand had mapped out exactly how his life would look. He was working as a product manager at a Bangalore startup. It was a good job, but one he felt he had outgrown. And around him, his friends were heading to the US for masters and MBAs. Suddenly, that thought of being left behind started to gnaw at him. Like many engineering graduates in the Bangalore startup bubble, he saw the US as this place to build a career, maybe even a company one day. So when the opportunity came along, he packed his bags.
And this was post-COVID, so we wanted to get that exposure to US. Obviously, when you're in Bangalore, you have that circle around you who are planning to go to US, and it seems very lucrative, the American dream, and every engineer has that dream.
Anand isn't alone. In our survey, 60% of respondents said exposure was their main reason for choosing the US. The promise of diverse classrooms, new exciting opportunities, and rubbing shoulders with people from everywhere. So imagine Anand's surprise when on his first day in class, he realized most of his classmates were like him, from India.
The idea for me was that okay, I'll be having that exposure to US education system, how things work, and I'll have US students as my batchmates. Well, to my surprise, 95% of them were Indians. So yeah, that was it. And well, more than 95%. And I would say the exposure that I wanted, I got it from MIT and Harvard. I was in Boston, so I used to just go there, spend my time there in labs. So both of them are open campuses. You can go, you can chat with the profs, you can attend their classes. It's kind of an open system there.
The real challenge began closer to graduation, when the wide eyed excitement of settling into the US way of life was very quickly replaced by the grind of job hunting. It was a tough year in the labor market. In fact, a Bloomberg report found that the share of 2024 MBA graduates from schools like Harvard and MIT, who were still employed 3 months after graduating, surged to around 15%. Now, that's a notable climb from just 4% in 2021. Now, for Anand, that meant fewer openings, more competition, and the constant worry that his visa would make employers think twice. Luckily enough, he did end up finding a job in Norfolk, Virginia. But the road to get there was full of twists and turns.
Job hunting was quite a journey, I would say. So I was planning to graduate in August of 24. I started my job hunt back 1 year, I would say, because that's the timeline it takes. And especially for STEM, we have to face a lot of challenges, visas, multiple rounds of interviews. And at the end, I've had that experience that, okay, even after being one of the final candidates, if they have to choose between a STEM candidate and an American citizen, they'll prefer an American guy.
Several people I spoke to echoed his experience, and our survey backed it up. They talked about not getting callbacks because of their visa status, struggling to integrate, and lacking the right connections. The class of 2025 has it even harder. It's entering one of the toughest job markets in years. Now, the good news is that nearly half of our respondents still managed to land a job in their field in the US. But more than half told us they had either moved back to India, were in the process of moving back, or weren't sure they wanted to even stay. Now, Anand is part of that second group. He's on the lookout for jobs in Bangalore. He told me there wasn't one single moment that made him want to leave. It was actually an accumulation of different things, like living in a small Virginia city with almost no Indian community, constantly feeling lonely, doing everything on his own, the distance from his family, the frustration of the US medical system. At some point, he says, you have to ask yourself, am I learning enough here? Is it worth it? Or would I be better off building my life closer to home? For him, the answer was India. But as many returnees discover, landing a job back home isn't quite as easy as it sounds. Stay tuned.
Hi, I want to take a quick pause here to tell you about something that I am currently working on. For an upcoming episode of 90,000 Hours, I'm looking at how India's IT industry is changing. From the way companies hire to what's expected of employees. So, if you worked in IT, I would love to hear from you. Tell me about the changes that you've seen, the skills you've picked up, and how you see the future. There's a quick and confidential survey that you'll find in the show notes of this episode. And with that out of the way, let's get back to it.
For a long time, an American degree was seen as a golden ticket to the good life. Most of our survey respondents, Anand included, still believe that their US education gives them an edge. For some, it's the soft skills they say they pick up overseas. And for others, it's the analytical rigor that's drilled into them from day one. But does it really translate back home? Would someone like Anand, armed with that degree, really be a strong contender for a job here?
It's actually a very important question, especially today. The thing is that now US degree has become a lot more accessible thing. There was a time when it was like had a wow value to it. Now people will ask, where did you get the degree from?
That's Rituparna Chakrabarti. She's a partner at talent management firm True Search and founder and former CEO of recruitment firm TeamLease. I caught up with her to understand where these US return graduates really stand in India's job market.
So there was a time when you have a US degree, so a lot of people will probably give you attention. Now, I don't think you'll get that attention just because you got a US degree. So it's definitely no more a sufficient criteria. If you get it from the Ivy League colleges or from some of the top liberal arts colleges or essentially the top ranking, yes, you might get people's attention on the job. But the second thing which is important is that, which actually what people should focus on is, do you have hands-on experience? Did you build domain relevance? Did you get practice? Are they added to your degree? If that's there, like if it's a job which requires your India relevance, how are you going to fit in? What have you done to kind of plug that gap is essentially what is needed.
Okay, but how would you think about that, right? When young people come to you today and they tell you that they're looking to move back because of, I don't know, visa restrictions, geopolitical reasons, the job market not looking so great, typically, what's your advice to them?
I know it's tragic, but I would urge everyone right now who's planning to go and study in the US that plan these steps in advance. Get yourself experience, get yourself, like even when you get summer breaks, winter breaks, I would actually tell you just stay there and get yourself as much work experience, internships lined up. Because just your degree will not be sufficient for you to get attention. So, and most importantly, prepare your way back to India.
Right. Okay. Rituparna, there's no tactful way to kind of ask this question. So I'm just going to go for it. If you could put your recruiter hat on for a minute, okay, you're looking for someone in the early to mid stage of their careers for a role at, say, I don't know, a fintech, right? You get an application from a Cornell MBA and say an IIM or an ISB graduate, and both have similar levels of work experience in relevant fields. Would you say that would be an easy, kind of straightforward choice from a recruiter's perspective?
If it's an IIM, an ISB, and Cornell, I don't think so, honestly. But the thing that people will ask that a guy from Cornell, why would that guy come and work for me? I think that concern would be there. The thing is, would that guy even stick? Am I a stopgap arrangement, or just because nothing is working out, that guy is coming to me? To be honest, that's the first thing. If I am a recruiter, that's the first thing that I will think. Because longevity of candidates being hired has always been a challenge, especially when you're trying to hire them when they're fresh coming out of colleges. I'm not saying IIM or ISB longevity is any higher, to be honest. I'd hire a guy who is neither. In today's, because they have hunger, I see some amount of being grounded in them. But if I were to choose, I don't think it makes honestly much of a difference, but I'll definitely probe deeper in asking questions of motivation.
Okay, but if you had to compare the landscape to, say, a year ago, right, would you say there's a shift in the type of role that US return graduates are now considering?
First and foremost, what India Inc. is asking for, or corporate India or organization India is looking for, are people who come from, let's say, overseas, but with experience. But yes, if you have studied in overseas, you did 8-10 years with some of these leading AI. I mean, for example, if you've worked in the Bay Area or in other parts, anywhere actually in the US, in organizations which is actually leveraging AI to create some really cool products, organizations are more than willing to welcome them back.
And that's the catch. In today's market, the shine of a US degree is rarely enough on its own. Like Rituparna said, employers want proof that you can hit the ground running, and they want to know that you are here to stay. Now, of course, there are graduates like Saloni who manage to make the move and find a job. But often, that decision to come back wasn't even theirs to really make. It was made for them by visa deadlines, job market realities, and the end of a countdown that came way too soon.
My parents and family would always joke that I picked the furthest end from Delhi to move to, because it was like, exactly the other side of the world and 13, 14 hours of time difference.
Saloni moved to the US in 2015 to pursue an undergraduate degree in psychology at Claremont McKenna College. It's a liberal arts school in California. Now, Saloni's degree eventually qualified for STEM status, which meant she could work in the US for up to 3 years under OPT, or optional practical training. This is a program under the F1 visa that allows international students the opportunity to work in the US. But that window, of course, came with a ticking clock. Employers knew that after those 3 years, her ability to stay would depend on her visa status. Many companies, even large ones, didn't sponsor visas at all. So it wasn't just about being qualified for the job. It meant clearing extra layers of uncertainty before you could even start. Now, Saloni, like Anand, eventually did land a job. Hers was at an executive search firm.
But after that, when my company actually applied for my H-1B, I got something called an RFE, which is basically like a notice that they send you for further, information. So before they approve, they initially ask for, like say XYZ paperwork. And then after you get the RFE, basically it means that you need to further justify why you should be given the visa over like a US citizen, or what are the exceptional, skills that make you ideal for this job over someone else.
For Saloni, moving back was still ultimately her choice. But unfortunately, for a lot of students, it isn't quite that simple. You see, across campuses, fear has started creeping in. Nearly half the people who took our survey said they had faced hurdles around visas, work permits, and immigration status. And recent reports tell us that some are struggling to even get to the US. F1 visas issued to Indians have dropped sharply. According to the US Department of State, it was down 34% in 2024 compared to the year before. For a lot of students who have made it to the US, the current political climate has been stressful. In fact, the anxiety runs so deep that some of them have started carrying their passports to class just in case they get questioned. Now, that's something the founders of SAT, a student-led advocacy group for South Asians in the US, told me they've been seeing firsthand.
This reminds me of a TikTok I saw recently, where it's this college admissions counselor, and he's saying, oh, this is the easiest time for you to get into an Ivy League college. And the number one statistic, he says, is because we first estimated that international enrollment would drop 20%, but estimates are saying it's even greater than that, right? And I think I had a surreal moment.
SAT founders Akhil Kasubai and Rohan Soni were in the thick of it. Earlier this year, when the Trump administration announced it would cancel hundreds of millions of dollars in federal funding for several Ivy League universities, Rohan was a student at Columbia. Akhil, meanwhile, was at the University of Michigan. They saw students lose their visas for joining pro-Palestine protests. They saw social media history become a deciding factor in whether someone could even enter the country. The fear, they say, wasn't abstract anymore.
Right now, this is not a safe place for international students to be. The president, the chief executive of our country, does not think that international students belong or deserve a place on college campuses, and is doing their best to silence them and then try to make sure that they don't stay in the US, which, of course, is a horrible thing.
Next year, the Ken is going to turn 10. Back in 2016, when we launched, we honestly were not sure if this would even work. A premium, no ads, no discounts business news subscription? Well, turns out it did. And that is thanks to you, our subscribers, our listeners, and our readers. And now it is time for the next decade. So we are rethinking how we work, how we build our products, and expand to what the Ken can be. And we need great people to do it. So here's the deal. We are hiring. But instead of tossing you a list of boring job descriptions, we want to hear from you. Tell us about your skills, your ambitions, and your big ideas. And let us build the future of the Ken together. And if this is not for you, but you know someone who would be interested, please do pass them the message. Head to the link in the show notes for more on this. And now, back to the episode.
Nearly half the people who took our survey said the experience of studying in the US fully met their expectations. Almost 80% said if they could turn back time, they would still choose to go to the US. The caveat is that most would do certain things differently. Some said they wished they got more work experience in India before they went. Some wished they networked more widely. One even joked that they wished they married a US citizen. Multiple people also said they would have thought long and hard about the course and college they would choose. After all, pedigree does matter, right?
It's funny because like I'm talking to like my friends in India and like my parents. They're like, oh, like, but you're from Cornell. Like, why are you not gonna? I'm like, guys, there's people from like all the crazy universities still like looking for jobs. It's not just me. I promise I'm not being lazy.
Ishan's American journey started much earlier than most. He moved to the US for high school, then earned an engineering degree from a university in Florida. But his plans to stay were cut short when he didn't make it through the visa lottery. So he packed up and moved back to Delhi, where he launched a startup with friends he'd known since the 8th grade. That's when he realized something pretty important. He knew he had the tech chops, but he didn't feel he had the business know-how to scale a company. So he started applying to B schools in Europe and almost on a whim submitted an application for a tech-focused MBA at Cornell. He got in, and in the end, the program delivered exactly what he hoped for, giving him the tools to spot the mistakes he made during his early startup days. Although he says he's in no rush to launch another one anytime soon. For now, Ishan's focus is purely financial.
My main reason for like going back to a job is financial. I put in money into the program, into my startup, and I kind of want to recover my my savings back and have a secured future for sure.
Ishan graduated in May and is now stuck in the limbo stage of job hunting. You see, that's the thing. The US degree was once an almost guaranteed ticket to success. The American dream for Indian students isn't gone yet, but it has changed. Some still see it as a foothold in the world's most competitive markets. For others, it's more of a stepping stone to build a career back home. But almost everyone I spoke to agreed on one thing. A degree alone isn't enough anymore. You need the work experience, the network, the timing, and most importantly, you need a whole lot of luck. The crux of the matter is, in this new reality, the gamble just may not be worth it anymore. Thank you for listening to 90,000 Hours, a podcast about the future of careers and workplaces from the newsroom of the Ken. This episode was edited and mixed by my wonderful colleague Rajiv CN. It was hosted and produced by me, Rahil Philippos. See you next time.